see someone else is temporarily in the driver's seat here. We are doing Desert Island Books. This is a great ongoing feature on Shawn's channel, a brainchild of his, where he does a variation on the old Desert Island discs broadcast that a lot of you will know, where he asks a bunch of bookish people what 8 books they would bring onto a desert island, plus 1 luxury item and 1 piece of music. And it's been a blast watching all the different choices that people have had. But, of course, he has to be a castaway himself at some point, right? So he's done me the singular honor of being the host while he is the castaway. So welcome, Shawn, to your own event, to your own series. Care to tell people? I mean, they're on your channel, but care to tell them about your channel, about yourself?
Yeah, well, I do booktube. That's all I'm doing now. I'm one of the unwashed unemployed at the moment, and I have a lot of booktube events coming up. As Steve mentioned last week, we should be at this point knee deep in Dick-tember.
I thought the same mental image. Let's just not share it with anybody else. We just had the exact same mental image, but it's not really presentable to the family audience.
That's detectives.
Yeah.
And also, too...
that's what we'll be knee-deep in.
Yes. And Mark at Book Time with Elvis and I are doing several things. We have something called Misplaced Authors. It's sort of forgotten authors or authors that most people don't read anymore. We'll each read a book by that author. We're going to do what we call audio escapades, which is old time radio, full cast productions, and talk about that in all aspects of that as well. The production, the music, and things like that. And we'll have special guests for these as well when we can find them and, force them on camera. And then we're doing silent moments, silent film in the same way, exploring film in the silent sense. So and I've been doing this for a while. This should be like the 15th or 16th episode, which is going quite well so far, and I hope it will continue. And
for new viewers of your channel who might be curious, because we don't always recap things on our own channels. You are one of the unwashed unemployed because of an incredible 1-2 punch, right, of COVID and tachycardia.
Yeah, well,
you didn't leave the workforce in a petulant huff. You sort of got knocked out of the workforce.
More or less. It was, well, I was made redundant first, and then I had a heart attack, and then I got COVID while I was in the hospital being treated for the coronary event. And I have now, a year and a half later, still got symptoms of long COVID. So that's fun.
Well, we can assume, for the purposes of fantasy, that you're in perfect fighting trim on your desert island. So you fetch up on your desert island with 8 books. Shall we see the first one?
Okay. That is Rabelais' Gargantuan Pantagruel, and this is the Screech translation. I've just read this translation earlier this year, and it is fabulous. And I first encountered this, I think, when I was quite young, in my either late teens or early 20s. And I just thought it was fabulous. It's just absolutely absurd. And I love the lists. He lists books or things, and it just goes on. And you're going through and you go, oh, that makes sense. And what?
Yeah, I know. It's just endlessly playful. Now, when you read it in your teens or early 20s, was it the earlier Penguin translation?
Yes. Yeah. I can't remember. Cohen, I think it was. That was
mass market paperback.
Yeah. And I read that about I read about 3 times, I think. And then I've had this one for several years while I've been in the UK here, and I finally decided to read it. And this is the one. I'll never go back to another translation because Screech he has endless footnotes, and he incorporates all the different texts and versions because the editor, well, he says the editor or the publisher put this in. Oh, I didn't really want this in because the church didn't like it, so he's trying to backpedal and say, no, that wasn't me. It was the publisher.
I felt the same way about his translation of Montaigne. That once you read it, you don't ever want to go back to any other version in English, anyway. So you're fairly confident that you would not get tired of Rabelais.
No. I've read it like at least four times now.
Wow.
And I can read it again and again and again and again and see so many things in it. And that's where most of these are. That I think that way. And it's just, it's just fabulous. It's somebody, if you haven't read it, if you like absurdities and bodily functions at times, crudity, but in a funny way, it's marvelous. I'd really love to see Terry Gilliam do a film of it. He's the only possible person that could do it. I don't think anybody else could.
It's always a little ironic smile when a young reader looks at that school of literature, bodily functions, gross humor, absurdist humor, things like that, and assumes that it came from Norman Mailer or Kurt Vonnegut, and because they're totally unaware that Gargantua and Pantagruel exists. They have no idea that it exists, and maybe those authors were unaware too. But it has a much longer history than that. It goes all the way back to ancient Rome.
Or they might go to James Joyce or something like that at the earliest and go, oh, that's amazing. He came up with all this stuff.
All right, so your first book was an epic novel. What's the next one?
No surprise, and I could never get tired of this. City by Clifford Simak.
Your favorite science fiction author.
Yeah, and I could never. I must have read. I don't know how many times I've read this. I've read it well over 25 times.
Wow. Now I'm trying to get to ask something that viewers of your channel are probably asking out loud to the screen. They've never had a chance to get you on camera and ask it. Why? Why is he your favorite science fiction author? You've read them all. You know them all. Why is he number one? Why is that? I'm not saying
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. Like
it speaks to you from him that you don't get from, A. Van Vogt or Frank Herbert or.
I guess it's his folksiness at times, his down to earth, the pastoral aspect, and a lot of times he doesn't get bogged down in science. So a lot of times his stuff doesn't date in the science sense, and
like a lot of Bradbury.
Yeah.
And Bradbury does the same thing. He'll strike that kind of a narrative tone, and his books don't date as a result, in a way.
And he has the heroes are usually everyday Joes, like everyday type people. Like somebody who, in your typical science fiction story, when aliens come to Earth, they go, "Take me to your leader." They'll find, it'll be a farmer out in the Midwest or something like that discovers an alien, or somebody tinkering in their garage or their basement and create a time machine. It's unbelievable, but it's just.
And thanks to recent gifts that you've showcased on your channel, you have a large amount of Clifford Simak now.
Yeah, I'm almost.
Is it possible that you have a copy of everything he ever wrote?
Not quite yet. There's still about 4 novels that I don't have, was it 9 or 8? 9 of the short story collection in book form, and I've got the other 4. There's 12 of them so far of his complete short fiction, but there's 2 more that are yet to come out. And there are some stories that I've never read, some short stories, because I could never locate the original magazines. And the great thing about these stories are that they are the magazine versions. They're not the rewritten slightly versions that would have been like in here or in other publications. So which means I'm going to be doing a reread of Simak, like a massive reread, and I'm also going to look at his journalism and getting, because now with online newspapers, I'm going to try to get every scrap that he ever wrote and read it in chronological order. And I know it's going to take me a long time, but it's be a labor of love. And I'll be reading the magazine version, and then I'll be reading the book version.
Okay, so not to get stuck on Simak, but it was going to happen. I've got two questions then.
Yeah.
Number one, are you saying, I mean, this is a towering figure in science fiction. City is well regarded as one of the top 50 works of science fiction ever written. Are you actually saying that there are works of this author that are uncollected?
Yes. Yeah. There's been lots of the short stories. They're now being put together. It's like Harlan Ellison's third Dangerous Visions. It had a Simak story in, but that was never published. It apparently is going to be published now from his estate. However, the story has only been put in this collection that's been edited by Dave Wixon, the executor.
And my second question is, so there is no such thing as a kind of variorum edition of Simak, an edition of, for instance, one story that would give you all the variations, all the different forms in one binding? No,
nothing like that. Because there's even the novels. There's if they were serialized in a magazine, they were then changed. For instance, I think it's Time and Again, the novel had a different ending in Galaxy Science Fiction because H.L. Gold decided he didn't like that ending, so made him change it.
Well, plus it wasn't always editors, right? Simak was a tinkerer.
Yeah.
Right, with his own work.
Not as much as, say, Van Vogt or others. Okay. But yeah, he changed things. He didn't change too much stuff, but he was always, unlike other writers, he always listened to the editor as well. If they wanted to change, he usually did it. He didn't balk. He didn't like Heinlein just would blow up at H.L. Gold changing his stuff for Galaxy. He just refused to send him anything again. And he didn't even like, John W. Campbell tinkering with his stuff. But Simak was a little more laid back for that.
Very brave of you, in a recent video of yours, to stick up for John W. Campbell in the atmosphere in 2022. Very brave of you to do it. Put a smile on my face. Where you said very simply, whether you like the man or not, and you probably shouldn't, he is fundamental to modern science fiction. You can't erase that. Yeah. That is just wrong to do. It's wrong to erase that. But if we're on the subject of personalities, do you get the impression that Simak didn't balk at editorial changes because he himself was kind of nice? Was he a nice guy? You know anything about his personality?
Yeah, every interview, like there's a few interviews that are on. There's one by James Gunn that was, I think it's 77. I think it's about a half an hour interview, and he's just so laid back and so easygoing, and he just seems like somebody you could just go out with and probably take a walk and have a nice quiet conversation with. That's the impression I have. He's just like he's a country boy in a sense,
Nobody ever gets that impression of me and Frida. You could go out on a walk with us, but we'd be yelling and talking the whole time.
But yeah, well, he grew up in the country, and and the thing is too, he grew up in a pioneer type home. And he was born in 1904, but he still grew up in southwestern Wisconsin at the confluence of the Mississippi and Wisconsin rivers. And that kind of landscape is throughout his books and stories as well in different ways.
I have on my channel a number of young readers, and I know you have a number of devoted young readers on your channel. We should point out to all of those young readers that Shawn and I were born after 1904. I know it all blurs together for you young people after a certain point, but we should point that out. We were both born after that. But we are running the risk here that we ran on my version of Desert Island Poe. When it came to the Bible, we're running the risk of spending the whole time talking about your favorite author. So let's move on to your next book.
Okay.
It can't possibly be another Clifford Simak.
No. I controlled myself. And some of these are standing in for editions, like I don't have the complete one. here's an author, like I won't show it yet, but it's an author that I like so much that I've refused to read everything that he's written in order to have something new every so often. And I've been doing that for like 30, 40 years.
Oh my God.
And I've been weaning myself, just a little bit at a time. But I do reread a lot of his stories, like the ones that I like. And that's Edgar Allan Poe. And this is just a complete story, so it doesn't have the poetry, but I would want a complete, and there are many of them, everything complete. Okay. And so again, it's something that I can either dip into or reread stuff, and then occasionally read something new.
Bit of a cheat, though, right?
How?
Poe never did a collected stories. He never did a collected poems.
No, not itself, but there are books that have.
Well, if anybody gets to cheat, it's you. It's your event, after all.
That's true. It's my island.
And for Poe, would it be the stories and the poems and nothing else? It wouldn't be like, for instance, his book reviews?
Well, if I could find something with everything, because there's a marvelous Library of America, like it's about 1,500 pages of his book reviews and essays, and it's a fabulous edition. Yeah. If I could duct tape those together, yes.
Yeah, again, for readers who might not know, this is not a small thing. We're talking about Edgar Allan Poe. You know him from one famous poem and maybe a couple of famous short stories, but he was the first great American book critic, the first one who understood what it was, and his book reviews are still incredibly readable. It's not a small thing at all. It's not that we're so familiar with him that we're picking out unknown little pieces here and there. No, Library of America did a big volume, and it's very good reading. Even though I think almost all the books that he reviews in that volume are long gone. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If it's a good book review, it won't matter. But I don't want to get talking about book review. Let's go on to your next.
Well, I just want to say he has a connection with the Boston there too. So
it's very tenuous, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm willing to say there's a whole group of people, a whole society of people who want to claim Edgar Allan Poe as a Boston author. Mm-hmm. But he was born in Boston because this is where his mother's water broke. That's all. That's the only thing. It's not like Ben Franklin, where he was born here and spent a long time here before he left. It's that it was happenstance alone. Poe is very much a Southern writer, so
yeah,
I'm not one of those people that claims him for Boston. But who is next?
Well, here's another author, and I'll preface it before showing. It's an author that I was forced to read at school for two novels, a novel and a novelette, and I hated them. I really hated them. And then when I first came to England, I was in Milton Keynes, and I was looking for work, so I wanted to read stuff. I didn't have many books with me at all. So, and I'm looking at the turnstile, and a book falls on my foot. So I pick it up, and it's the back of it. So I didn't notice the author's name, and I read it was about a guy who's working in a bookshop in London, and he's writing an epic poem, and I open it up and I read little bits of it of, customers that are coming in. And because I've had a bookshop, and I go, I recognize that, who is this? I turn it over. Oh, bloody George Orwell, and keep the apodistra flying. And I put it right back immediately on the turnstile. And I couldn't find anything else. So I kept going back to it. Like 4 or 5 times. And I got it and read it. And then I read through all his fiction. And then there's these 4 compilations that have been done by Peter Davison from his 21 volume complete works, which I have. And that's what I would take if I could, but I can't. So in lieu of that is the Everyman Library essays.
Oh my!
And I do like his nonfiction much better than his fiction. And the 2 books that I was talking about was 1984 and Animal Farm. And I still I've reread them several times, and I still don't think they're top notch as much as people say. I know it's heresy, but they're not.
I agree. I myself would rank Keep the Aspidistras Flying over either one of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that is also true of Down and Out. I would
Down and Out
rank
is
his
fabulous.
other stuff higher than that. I think the reason why we're so accustomed to think those two books is because those two books got latched onto by academia. They're taught in high schools. That's unbeatable. As an edge, that's just unbeatable. That means they're going to be the first things that come to people's minds. Well, that, and also thanks to the United States, we're now living in Animal Farm in 1984. We're now living in a future that is now the present and can best be described as Orwellian. But that volume that you've got there, the single essays, that volume of essays, that is inexhaustible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 1,400 pages with the index. So it has so much. And like I say, I've got the complete 20 volume work, 21 volume, because there was an additional volume that was put out. And you mentioned Down and Out is fabulous. The Road to Wigan Pier, the Homage to Catalonia, those, like his four nonfiction books are really good. And even his fiction, but I really like Keep the Apodistra Flying, and I like what's the it all started the day I got my new false teeth.
Oh, right. It's gone right out of my head. A famous line.
Yeah. You had a book that was the same title about some swimmer, I think, wasn't it? Isn't that the same title? You just showed it. You got it in the mail. He's come out as gay.
Oh, right.
I think it's the same title. Anyway, yeah, it's I can't remember now unless it says in here, but it doesn't really matter. But it's just that I really like too. No, it's not. It's Coming Up for Air. That's what it is. That's not the title of your book. I don't know why I thought that.
So you'd bring Orwell, which I think a lot of people mention on any version of this little event, but you're picking his nonfiction.
Yes, definitely nonfiction. Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I love the 20 volumes. Like the first 9 are his nonfiction ones, but they're fabulous. It's fabulously edited by Peter Davidson. It's got his letters back and forth with Golan's, talking about Wigan Pier.
Well, that's the big hardship here that most people don't experience when they do Desert Island Books with ShawnDStandfast, is that Shawn, as any who's watching will know, his best friends are 30-volume sets. And you don't get to bring those. You yourself created a scenario in which you have to leave all of your best bookish friends behind.
Yes,
so
I know.
The best you can.
Well, it's like Jason Harrigan said, can I use some duct tape? It's one book. Or just rebind it into one big book.
So what's next?
Okay, here is one that is standing in because I don't have the omnibus, but there is an omnibus of this. It's Hyperion and The Fall of Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Now, I've read this again about four or five times, and to me, this is endless. I can dig into this so much.
And there's a volume that combines the two?
Yes, there is. Yeah, there's an omnibus, oversized volume that combines these two, but not the last.
I've never seen that. Did it ever get published in the U.S.?
I think so.
I'm calling to mind every edition of Dan Simmons that I know, and I don't recall.
Yes.
Was it a book club? Was it Science Fiction Book Club or something like that?
No. It was a paperback. I've only seen it in a paperback, an oversized paperback.
It must have been immense.
It was big, yeah. Well, it's meant to be one novel. This is meant to be one novel, and because the publishers just said, "Well, we can't do that, so we're going to split it up."
Now, this, aside from Simak, this is science fiction appearing on your list. None of your viewers are going to have read Clifford Simak, but what about this author? What can you tell them about this author that would be the reason that this book, you're viewing it as one book, right?
Yes.
What would be the reason? Just that it's inexhaustible.
It's inexhaustible because it has character John Keats, and there's a lot based on his poetry. There's not based so much, but there's stuff that's pulled out of it. And this, we'll get to this in a moment. But also too, Teilhard Chardin with the Omega Point, and just so much philosophy and religion that's in there, and his homage to other science fiction writers, that, and all this stuff is under the surface.
Right.
You could read it
Right.
as a soap opera. I mean, a space opera.
Right. In case anybody's listening who hasn't read it, we should make it. It's totally enjoyable without that.
Yeah.
Without knowing all that. What the point we're making here is that the more you know, the more enjoyable it is.
Yeah.
But you don't need to know any of that to enjoy it. As a book.
You could read it just on the surface of a space opera and enjoy it as a smash bang thing, and they're supposed to be making a film of it, and that's probably what they'll do, is they'll just skim off the surface and make it a few hours, and that's it. Like Dune, Dune is not just Arrakis and worms. There's so much depth to it, but I chose this one because I think I can dig more out of it on an island than Dune. And the next one is a bit of a problem because my favorite poet is John Clare, and this is the is the Oxford major works. Now I can endlessly read him and see new things.
John Clare is your favorite poet?
Yeah, like it's most enjoyable. Like I would say, yeah.
Most enjoyable?
Yes.
Now, is that the long COVID?
No, it's been for like 40 years.
Oh my God. You're
love
the only person I've ever met. Okay.
But the problem is with the Hyperion, I already know all this stuff well. And this, I think, would be my choice. I will not take John Clare, and I'll take the complete poems by John Keats, because I can relate it to that and see what he's done, if he's done anything.
Are you telling me that you know John Clare's poetry well enough that you don't need to bring him along? You know it that well?
Well, I know this volume.
Anyone like his poetry that much?
I do want his. See, again, I want his 10 or 12 volume complete works.
Oh my God.
But I can't. I don't have that, and I probably never will.
That Oxford volume, I've never seen it before. About 30 years ago, there was a big complete poetry hardcover. I think it was from Farrar, Straus and Giroux in America, of John Clare.
Yeah, it wasn't complete.
In conjunction with a new biography of him. Then new. This is obviously not that, right? Because this is not complete.
No, there's nothing complete. That volume you're talking about is not complete.
It isn't. Okay.
There is no actually complete. He's written over like 5,000 or 6,000 poems. Okay. And there's stuff that's still being excised from the archive. I don't think I have. There's somebody that is putting out little chapbooks, thematic, and pulling out stuff. And they also pulled out his novel, his unfinished novel as well, which is amazing. But this is done by Eric Robinson, who basically paid $1 or £1 for the manuscripts, which are now in the Northampton Public Library.
And is that Oxford volume the most, Clare, that you can get for a paperback in one book?
I think so. Yeah. There's other ones. There's been contention because Robinson has said that he owns the copyright to this, but it's never been enforced. And a lot of other authors have put out collections. Sense and Faber they put it out, and there's been no problem. Because he can't own it, because he's long dead. It's just that it hasn't been published. Most of the stuff hasn't been published.
So even though he holds such a special place in your heart, he wouldn't be the poem you would bring. You would bring Keats instead. Yeah,
I think so, because I get more enjoyment of sitting here, but I know his stuff quite well, that I can envision in my mind, if not word for word. But the Keats definitely would go with the Hyperion, the Dan Simmons, and like if I could bring on like a huge library of science fiction as well, and Teilhard de Chardin, like all this kind of stuff that I would in order to Jason Harrigan and I sort of joked about that he's going to do an annotated version of Foucault's Pendulum, and I'll do an annotated version of this, and it'll be 50 volumes long each, But getting back to John Clare, like even though I'm not taking him, The Parish is a fabulous poem. That is a fabulous poem. It's long, but it's fabulous.
Talk about the book equivalent of being stranded on a desert island. I guess it takes all types. Please tell me that for your next selection, we've returned to comprehensibility.
Well, and again, this stands in, and it's been on a lot of people's. I have read everything by him, but he was the second author that I was trying not to read everything of, or at least these stories. But when I first moved to England,
rationing Edgar Allan Poe. That is just astonishing.
And I was rationing this as well. But when I moved where I am now and got a job, I wanted to read something. And I went to the library. It was pretty poor. I went in I went through about 150 or 200 titles, and they had nothing. And finally, they had the complete Sherlock Holmes. So I sat and read, the whole thing, and that has sort of ruined it for me. And I have no new Sherlock Holmes to read. But I can go back to this, and again, it's something after I delve into some of this other stuff, I can quickly enjoy a story here and there.
And you don't think? I mean, you must know the Holmes stories backwards and forwards. You don't think you would get bored with it?
No, I love them. Every time I read them, I sort of it's like I no longer read it from cover to cover. I dip into them. So when I do, I really enjoy it, and it doesn't matter how many times I've read the Red-Headed League or other ones. I can still enjoy it.
I was tempted to with the complete Holmes and also with the Jungle Books, and the reason I didn't do it is because I thought I would get bored with them. Eventually, I would get bored with them. I guess I never have got bored with them, so maybe that was an excess of caution on my part.
Yeah.
But
it's something to take. It's something to take away from. Sorry,
I'm noticing something in your choices so far. You're
What?
picking large collections of short works. Gargantua and Pantagruel isn't that the only example of a large book that isn't a collection of shorter pieces?
Well, and Hyperion.
Oh, right. Okay. I think of Hyperion as
and the next one.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it then. What's
the last one? This is where it's my island. Remember? Now, it's one of my favorite. It's Les Miserables, and this is the newest translation.
Is that the Big Penguin? Look at that.
Yeah, it's the Big Penguin, and it's translated by Christine Doniger.
Yeah, turn that sideways. Show people how big it is. Look at the size of that thing. Good Lord.
It's for over 1,400 pages. It's got about 100 and some more pages than the previous one by Denny that Penguin did. And I'm curious. I haven't read this yet. I haven't read this one. But I have read it about 4 or 5 times. And it's endlessly fascinating to me. And I've read it in a few translations. And here is the thing, because I like it so much, and a lot of people, and you've said it before, you find there's boring parts in it. I love those. I love when he goes into the history, Waterloo or the hair shirts. I just love that stuff, or the sewers. I love it.
Every fan of that book that I've ever met has made a point of saying that they love those things. Every Les Miserables fan who loves the unabridged version that I've ever met goes out of their way to say, I don't think there are any slow parts. I'm not saying I love it despite those. I love the slow parts. I love the digressions. There must be a magic there. That's for sure.
Yeah. And the thing is, I've wanted to do for some time is read every English translation and compare them. And I've got every English translation as far as I know, except one. I have it on a PDF somewhere. So it's one book, but I'll be taking multiple versions of it.
Oh, that's not fair. Oh,
It's
that's
one
lovely.
book. It's one
Which
book.
one is that? That's lovely.
Yeah, it's translated by Julie Rose. It's the Modern Library in 2008. Because when they did this one, they said, "Oh, it's the first female translator." No, it's like the third at least translator.
Yeah, it's
So we got
amazing. The crew that are designing a book for a publisher, the publicist crew that are designing talking points about it. It's amazing how often they get stuff like that wrong.
Yeah.
You'd think that since they've got access to the author or to the annotator, that they would simply ask, but they don't. It doesn't appear that they do. But do you remember when you were introduced to Les Miserables? Did
yeah.
you fall
Again,
in love with it because of the Cameron McIntosh musical?
no. It was long before that. Like it was in the early '80s when I first picked it up. I picked it up in the this translation, the Denny translation, but a mass market paperback. I think 2 volumes it might have been, actually. I can't remember now. But and I loved it at that time, and I loved the films. Like I loved the film versions, and I always make a point of watching film versions. The best one that I've seen, well, there's a couple, but the best is, I think, a 1919 silent one. It was a serial. It's about 6.5 hours, and I saw that finally at South Bank in London, and with piano accompaniment, and it was fabulous.
Have you ever seen Les Mis, the musical?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
You've never seen it?
No, it's something that I will eventually get around to it, but I just don't understand how you could do it in a musical. So I've balked against watching it.
Oh, but you have the paperback. You just showed it with the movie poster, with the musical poster.
Well, what, that one?
Right there, yes.
Yeah.
I sold.
But that is another translation
of that little paperback. I must have sold 1 million copies of it.
That's another translation, sort of. It's based on the first American translation by Wilbur, C.E. Wilbur. And it's done by Lee Feinstock and Norman McAfee. And it's a honking one. It's like over 1,000. We're not done yet. And then there's this one, the Denny one, the Penguin. That was the original Penguin one that I had. And then we go back in time even further to this. Here is the only one that I could find in a half decent price, is the Barnes and Noble one by Hopgood, and it's like 1900 or 1899 or something. Isabel F. Hopgood.
Boy, oh boy! When you cheat, you really cheat, don't you?
Not done yet. And then we get the first, well, it's a second edition, but it's the first UK publication or translation. And this is the second edition.
You're not allowed to bring 10 editions of a book.
I'm not done yet.
Flagrantly cheating.
And this was owned by I think it's Charles Serraillier, who did he was the he was a scholar, but he edited the Everyman magazine called Everyman, and this belonged to him. It's been rebound in quarter leather, and you'll be happy to know the last one, which is the first American edition, and this is the Everyman Library by Charles E. Wilbur.
As we clarified, what seems like 25 editions ago, it is Shawn's Island. So let's just make sure the rest of you don't get any funny ideas, because he will crush you like a bug if you try this trick yourself. He gets to do it because it's his island.
But the thing, like, this is a perfect place to do it if you have the time to read, to read consecutively and make meticulous notes of the differences.
Well, yes, and all of your fellow castaways would agree that it's the perfect time to do it, but you haven't let them. They're not allowed to do it. You're the only one who's allowed to do this. Well, let's move on from this abomination.
But I'm missing one. I am missing one because I can't find it in book form. It's I had to look it up here to remember the guy's name. It was actually, that was 1862, which is the American and the British one. But there was somebody called A.F. From Richmond, Virginia in 1863 that published it. But I've only got a PDF of it.
Someone published an unabridged English translation of Les Miserables in Richmond in 1863. You'd think they'd have other things on their mind.
Yep. By West and Johnson Publishers. The editor's preface announces its intention of correcting errors in Wilbur's translation.
Okay, so you're dead set on correcting errors in Wilbur's translation, and you're not so concerned with the gigantic Union armies 1 mile away from your city. I guess you got to have bookish priorities. But are we up to your last book?
That was the last book. That was 8 books. Les
Miserables in 25 translations. That's your last one.
Yeah, 6 translations. I think 6.
Well, it's not from want of trying that it's only 6. God almighty. All right, well, those were your books. Good Lord. Your comparative translation of Les Miserables would take you the rest of your time on your desert island.
Yeah.
So we are now dealing with music.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a problem. I've got 3 here that I really, really would want, and I think I know which one I'll take, and it's because I'll explain why. One is Carl Orff's Carmina Burana, and at least on an island I can play it as loud as I want, and I haven't done that very often.
For the camera, who is that?
Carl Orff.
No. Which production is that?
Oh, sorry. This is Deutsche Grammophon. Christian Thielmann, 1999, I think it was. Okay. It was recorded.
Okay.
And it's, I guess, was he a Nazi? Carl Orff. Hitler liked it.
But the music isn't Nazi. That's all that counts. That's all that matters. And I suppose for viewers, you want to stress here that Carmina Burana is a lot more than just the one bit they know.
Yes.
Right. There's one bit of Carmina Burana that everyone knows. They'll know it if they hear it. They won't know that.
Fortuna or
right.
Fortuna, yeah.
Right. They'll know that, and they won't know anything else. But what you're attesting to here is that the whole thing is wonderful.
Oh, it is, yeah. And it's based on, as you know, a medieval collection of what would you call it? I guess minstrel tales. And those are fabulous too, and those have been recorded. Even his second part to this, Carmina Catullus, which is kind of interesting if you look at the translation.
So are you saying that would win?
No, I don't think so.
You're not saying you're going to cheat here too.
No. It's going to be one, but it's like I've struggled with which one of these 3, and I think I've come to a conclusion. And I'll explain why. Another one is it's a special 25th anniversary edition of the Cranberries. Everybody else is doing it, so why can't we? And I really, really like the Cranberries, and I like her voice, and I can endlessly listen to this over and over again. So that was, but that's not going to be the one I'm choosing. And what I'm choosing is Rush, A Farewell to Arms.
You're choosing Rush over Carmina Burana?
Yeah, and there's a reason for that.
I can only assume that the reason for that is a half-empty bottle of rye liquor right next to your chair. There can't be another reason. Unless Geddy Lee has a gun to your head immediately off camera.
No, I do like it, but also, like, there's one song that's Cinderella Man, which is based on the film Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. So it will remind me of classic film, and it'll remind me of other books that I'm not taking. So that's the reason every time I listen to this, it'll remind me of other things that I've left behind.
Well, but so would your memory. Without dragging yourself through Rush, for God's
sake, I love Rush.
You had to listen to it once for a whole decade. You want to go back?
Well, I listen to it all the time. I've been a fan of Rush since the late 70s. They sort of were past their peak in about 1982 or so, But I do like their stuff, their first albums, and this is the 40th anniversary edition.
I especially like the long musical cycle they have where they set John Clare's poems.
Well, they do literary stuff, and that's the reason why I would take this, is because it would remind me of other things every time I listen to it. And but this
You've
would
got to be the only person who will bring Rush to your desert island.
Well, so far, yeah. But even I'd probably be the only one that would bring Carmina Burana as well.
I also can't help but notice what a gentleman you're being. You just can't seem to help yourself. Here I am ragging all over your musical choice, and you have yet to even allude to my own musical choice. You're a gentleman, true and true. So we've done with music. What about your luxury item?
My luxury item would be something, okay, like I say, I'm going to translate, or not translate, but look at the different things. I want to make a notation. So this would be sort of a palette of lined paper sealed in plastic so it wouldn't mold. I could do with probably a few pencils, and I've allowed somebody else to take some writing material. A few pencils would be good, because by then I'm sure I could work something up, some ink with plant extracts or even charcoal. I'm sure, or I could even probably find some soft stone.
Now, why is that? Why that choice? Is the act of writing that important that you would want to do that?
Yeah, because I would want to, I'd probably get back into writing poetry, and as well as writing my magnus opus. Or just, like I say, just keeping a diary. Keeping a diary. Yeah, is the main thing that I thought of this. But then I realized that if I'm doing this, the different translations, I'll want to meticulously note the changes and just be pedantic.
Yes, indeed. Wow. So an infinite supply of writing materials.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming.
A lot of people have, figured, okay, they'll bring a knife, they'll bring a hatchet and stuff like that. And I go, okay, remember, my background is archaeology. I know a little bit about flint napping. I'm sure I'm going to find probably some, it's probably going to be a volcanic island. So I'm going to find some obsidian there, and I could fashion something. I don't need something to start fires. I can do all that.
Oftentimes the volcanic part has been layered over for centuries by soil and other things. I don't put it past you. I'm sure that you would be able to do that, if anybody would be. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is, to put it mildly, an idiosyncratic edition of Desert Island Books, as I guess we'd expect from the Master of Ceremonies. I just want to stress, once again, for any of you who's listening, that the egregious cheating is only because it's Shawn. I'm sure that you would agree with me that you don't want to set a precedent of people just cheating willy-nilly.
No. Well, I do make concessions for some things, and I thought, one concession for this, and it is like in my defense, it is one book. It's just different. It's one novel, but it's just different translation. So it's stretching.
There's no defense at all. That is the kind of defense that a tyrant of a desert island makes, because he can't be gainsaid. But it's at this point in Desert Island Books that you would ask a guest what is coming up on their channel, what is in the future, the immediate prospects of the future. And I want to ask you that, but I want to ask you one more immediate thing as well. Yeah. How are you liking? I mean, you said, you had a 1-2 punch of health problems, either one of which would have seen out most people. You lived through them all, as anybody who's spent time in a jail in Egypt would probably be expected to do. I remember when you were making videos during the worst of that, you were still trying to apprise people of what was going on. And I watched one of those videos up in Vermont at Mark Richardson's house. I said out loud, boy, he doesn't sound very good. And I think Mark actually said, he survived an Egyptian jail. I think he'll be okay. And it turns out you were. But as a result of those two things, as you mentioned, you are temporarily out of the workforce. And I can't help but notice, and I'm sure 1,000 other people out there have noticed, that you've turned a lot of attention to BookTube.
Yes.
So in addition to what's coming on your channel, I'd love to hear. That must reflect that you're enjoying the process, right? I mean,
it fills the time. The time that I have is like a very simple thing, but I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't enjoy it. Like I'd be like, because of the situation that I'm in, I'd be reading anyway. So at least this way, I can find excuses to read certain things, and that's the thing. It's like it'll be over by now, but in August there's another event that I'm doing or will have done. It's called Audible August that Gareth at Books, Songs, and Other Magic is doing. And I've wanted to read the novelizations of the Beiderbecke trilogy. I really love the series. And so I thought it's a perfect excuse to do that.
And you've mentioned a couple of times that the very distressing brain fog associated with long COVID has in part abated for you.
It comes and goes. Yeah, it comes and goes. The heat really screws me up. And as soon as I get really tired, like I had to have a nap before we did all this, because otherwise it'd be gibberish. And I still can't connect the word to my tongue at times, and I just can't remember things that I used to. Like, I mean, like seconds. I can remember old stuff, but it's almost like Alzheimer's. Like seconds ago, somebody said something, and I go, "What was that?"
And neurologically speaking, that the inability to grab the recent stuff is also the reason why your concentration would just fray when you're tired. That's the same thing. That's the same part of the brain. I have an old friend who's a literary editor who said he went through hell. He was in the hospital for a week, and he said there's nothing worse than this brain fog, because it gets right at the heart of who I am. If that's true, then who am I? I can only imagine. That is something I think about every time long COVID makes a headline. I think about you and that old friend and that prospect. But for you anyway, that fog comes in patches. It isn't always there. So
no, it's not anymore. Well, see, that's the thing. Like, I seem to go through cycles with stuff because I have a lot of symptoms. I don't really sleep anymore. I have to rest about anywhere from like 12 to 18 hours a day. It depends on the day. And so I only have so many hours that I can actually be conscious enough to do something. And the other times that I'm even too tired to read. Like when it was hot, I read the epilogue of a book, and then I put it aside, and I came back later and I started reading the first, and I go, and I couldn't remember anything that I read in that epilogue. I had to reread it. Like it was just as if I never read it, but I know I did. So, and that's the worst for me. The resting, I've got the time, I can do the resting. I don't have taste much anymore or smell.
Really? So that went away and did not come back.
Yeah, I can taste, but not correctly. There's 3 things that I can taste that's normal. And right from the beginning, I could taste apples and apple juice, and that tasted normal to me. Then I found out garlic. I could taste garlic. So I was putting tons of garlic on everything to have taste. And then at Christmas, a friend gave me a small bottle of 15-year-old Glenfiddich single malt whiskey. I can taste that fine. A good combination, though.
Wow. Well, so not the rosiest picture possible, but not the worst picture possible either.
No, it's like I say, I enjoy reading. So to be forced, not forced, but to be in a situation where I have to now, or to pass my time is to read and talk about the books. Like, how much worse could that be? It can't. It's not a bad life. In many ways, I don't think.
Right. You can certainly imagine from where you're sitting, all the people who complain that they can't do their job. They can't go to work because of long COVID. You can certainly see why that would be true.
Yeah.
In a lot of those cases. There are plenty of people claiming, you giving me 6 weeks of pay is not enough. It's a year later and I am incapacitated. Some days I am incapacitated. And it's because of this. I wasn't incapacitated before I got this illness. And now, whether we understand it or not, it's obviously the reason. why I am now incapacitated.
Yeah, and I now know that, like, I've got a few hours here and there in a 24-hour period, and I now know that if I work myself in the right way, have the nap in the right place, and stuff like that, and rest, then I can budget my time and say I can be available even at midnight to 3 a.m. or something like that if I really need to be to do something, and that's like, but I can't do that all the time. And like for working wise, it's like, yeah, I'll have an hour here or a couple hours here throughout the day. But where can you work? Where can you just put in an hour here or there at like 3 a.m. to do something? It's not going to work.
So the side benefit is that it's full steam ahead for BookTube.
Yeah, because I'm doing so much stuff like with Mark. When Mark and I did a book time with Elvis, the first one, we discovered we had so many interests, like Zulus, these old authors, like older authors, and all this kind of stuff. And and so I said, well, I've been wanting to do this. Would you be interested in joining me in these things? And he's jumped at them. So we're going full steam ahead for it. Like I say, misplaced authors, the forgotten authors, audio stuff, audio full cast, mostly old time radio, but that's not going to be the full confines, and then silent film and anything else at times, and all the other stuff that I'm doing.
And can I assume, even though this is coming out a month after we're filming it, can I assume that Desert Island Books will still be going strong?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, because this will be sort of middle September now. I think I'm putting them out in the order that I do them, basically. So I'm ahead, and there's others that want to do it as well. They're getting their lists together and checking it twice.
Great. Well, there we go. That is your episode of Desert Island Books. You have finally been covered. You have finally been cast away. So we'll wrap things up now.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve, for doing this.
Goodbye to BookTube. This was a ton of fun.
Yeah.